back to Critical Mass Professional Practice Series. I'm your host, Shunda Jenkins, one of the Critical Mass Committee members. Today's episode is titled Nurturing Client Relationships Beyond the First Session. Today, we'll be chatting about relationship-centered care, maintaining boundaries with our clients, and knowing when to refer out, and then some sustainable practices for long-term work. I have with me today Shameka Chanel, a licensed professional clinical supervisor, a certified somatic clinician, the founder of Points of Origin Counseling Support and Education Center. She blends narrative psychology and somatic practices and leadership development to help foster identity, secure attachment, and holistic wellness. In her role as a clinical director, she walks alongside interns, professionals, and program members through reflective care, education, and community work. Her impact extends into District 25 with the Roots to Resilience Initiative and through building entrepreneurial and clinical networks, advocacy, and educational pathways with the National Association of Black Counselors. Join me in welcoming Shameka Chanel to our podcast today. Welcome, Shameka. Glad to have you join us today in this discussion.
Thank you for having me. This is a cliche saying, but it rings true, I imagine, for everyone. I'm so glad to be here. So glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. I've been knowing Shameka for a while. I started following her on social media and I met her in person a couple times. So she's an amazing person. And so I'm just so happy to have her with us today. So before we dive into the questions, Shameka, is it possible for you to share with the listeners what made you decide on your career and how is the day-to-day like for a clinical director?
What made me decide on my career? I was actually thinking about this. I didn't necessarily know you were going to ask me this question, but my response kind of popped into my mind this morning as I was getting ready for the day. It's a common question that for me changes or evolves every time I go to answer it. And this morning, part of what came to mind for me is I feel in a lot of ways that, you know, if we talk about it from a spiritual direction, I was chosen for this, right? The conversation I was having with myself this morning was just in thinking about me being, you know, little Shameka and what that was like for me and how confusing life was and how I felt this drive to understand the things that I did not understand. You know, I'd see people doing things in this world and I would find myself curious about why it wasn't making sense and why the things that made sense to me wasn't making sense to them. And so from there, I started like indirectly studying like what you would call psychology or human behavior. And I found some support there, right? I was able to support myself and my lack of clarity by finding clarity, by kind of connecting the dots of what wasn't making sense. Right? I remember being little and feeling frustrated. Like, for instance, I gave this example yesterday, actually, with seeing people kind of proverbially trying to put together pieces of a puzzle and they're like jamming the pieces together. And I'm like, what you need is right there. The piece you need is right there. And they're still jamming the pieces together. And so I'm feeling frustrated. I'm finding myself feeling frustrated. I'm like, it's very simple. And why are you not listening to me? Like, what is the disconnect for you to be able to see what I see so clearly? And so from there, I was committed to studying psychology and studying different things of spirituality and just spaces of curiosity in trying to better understand people by better understanding my experiences with them.
Yeah. No, I love that because you didn't go at it like, oh, these people are this way, right? You went into like, how can I understand them better? Like, what can I learn so that I can understand people better? So I love that you wanted to actually understand what was actually happening. with the people versus like, okay, this person's just going to be like that. No, I want to understand why these people are like this. And then that also provides the clarity that you need and also probably makes you more compassionate because now you see, okay, they're operating this way and this is the reason why.
Yeah, it made it very easy at that point, like you said, to not only develop compassion, but to develop my own clarity to where I wasn't maybe taking it personal, that they were kind of able to see and listen to what I'm saying is right there. And instead see that this is kind of just who they are right now. And that's okay. I understand why they are this way now.
Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, at least for myself, I love that that was your experience because I had similar experience. I went the route of studying NLP, which helped me understand people and their behavior, and it helped me be more compassionate towards people because I was like, okay, what's wrong? Why are people acting this way? You know. And so I love that we had somewhat a similar experience when it comes to just learning these things to understand people more. So I love that about.
Yeah.
All right. So, what is it like to be a clinical director? I am not a clinical director, so I don't know exactly what you guys do. Share with us what it's like to be one, and if you don't mind sharing, kind of like what a traditional day is like for you.
That's actually a really interesting question because, like, as I'm hearing you ask the question, I'm like, oh, she did ask me that. But I'm also thinking about the fact that everyone's experience is drastically different. So I can, of course, share my experience, but I also have the sense of clarity that my experience is very much so evolving. And what I
Yeah.
experience right now is not going to be my experience tomorrow. It wasn't my experience yesterday, and it's going to be extremely autonomous when you look at maybe someone else's experience. And there are several different reasons why that might be, right? Including the
Hmm.
fact that I love evolution. I
Yeah.
love evolution, right? And so I also think about what I have created and what has been created with points of origin. Not long ago, maybe a few years ago, it was just points of origin. Now it's
Mm.
points of origin, counseling support, and education center, right? So part of that evolution was me moving more into thinking about, very similar to your last question, what is needed here?
Hmm.
And being able to allow myself the freedom to create those bridges back to the puzzle where I'm seeing people are kind of bumping their heads and I see something on the other side and I'm like, hey, you want to look over the fence? I had to realize as the clinical director that I might want to create the bridge so
Yeah.
they can walk themselves across the bridge to actually see what they're unable to see with my voice, right? And
Yeah.
what they're unable to sense in the energy that I'm communicating indirectly. And so the life or the day in the life of a clinical director, in a lot of ways, is creating those bridges for people to find success in the spaces that they are choosing for themselves. So if we're looking at an intern who's in high school and they're saying, I don't know what psychology is about. I don't even know if I want to go into therapy. Okay, go have fun, go explore. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I am going to
Yeah.
tell you there's something on the other side of the bridge. Have fun getting there. I've created a couple pathways for you. I'm
Yeah.
hoping you're going to find some sunshine on the way because I put some sunshine in there too. And it's the same thing for like our LPCAs, our LPCSs. It's and how am I able to position myself to help people see that there is an end to the means and that they, in a lot of ways, get to author that journey and that there is supports there. So, in the life of a clinical director, I could really sum it up by saying that I have a lot of freedom simply in the fact that I've created a private practice, right? That
Hmm.
in itself comes with a lot of freedom to decide. It's one of the reasons why I decided that's what I needed to do, because we have so many organizations that function differently. And in their
Yeah.
function, they have a lot of requiremits, right? One of our biggest requirements at points of origin is that you figure out who you are
Yeah.
and you live in that. And so
Yeah.
that in itself creates a lot of fear. Like I was actually just processing, I had a meeting with a local agency recently that we're going to be supporting with some high school interns. And as I'm sitting there waiting for them to arrive, I got the brainy idea to look at some feedback from some of our recent interns. And one of the things that the intern said was kind of echoed in several other feedback reports. And that was, when I started, I felt overwhelmed because I had so much freedom to decide.
Oh,
And
wow.
what I found is when I finished, I felt so much more confident in myself. So
Yeah.
the life of my life as a clinical director really does look a lot like, what do I need to do to help people get there?
Yeah. Well, I love that. I mean, just knowing that you're allowing them to be free, because most of the time people want to put people in a bubble and want them to be in a structured way, but allowing them to be free allows them to actually become more of themselves. And then you building bridges. I love the fact that all right, I'm going to build a bridge and you're going to go on your own path, right? And they get to decide how that want that to look like. And yes, you sprinkle some sunshine along the way for them, right? So no, I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us today. So now let's get into some of these questions. The first question is, why does relationship centered care matter when it comes to,
Mhm.
your business or just in general? Why is relationship centered care important?
Mhm. Relationship centered care is important for a lot of different reasons. Um, I'm thinking about, gotta sneeze, it's trying to come.
Go ahead.
I'm thinking, it's toying with me a little bit. But I think about, my mind goes to secure attachment and kind of like reflective care. And
Yeah.
we can grow, and there's a need to grow autonomously and in isolation, like within oneself. But there's such a beauty and such an option to polish what we find within ourselves by being in the
Yeah.
community and connecting with the relationships that we have the potential to access. One thing that I say a lot of times is that everyone that we meet, they have pieces of us,
Yeah.
right? And that makes me think about something that you and I were talking about earlier, as far as like having conversations with different practitioners and how you learn something from everyone you speak to that you can apply to yourself. That's part of what I'm
Yeah.
referring to when I say everyone we meet, they have pieces of us. They help us to
Yeah.
see ourselves differently. Or I have this thing on my desk that I use in like probably more sessions than not, but they
Yeah.
reflect such a us that is extremely reflective. And I might be talking to you, and you're showing me this part of myself. And then I go
Yeah.
talk to my son, and he might show me this piece of myself. Right?
Yeah.
And then I'm talking maybe a mentor or someone that's in a different space in the community from me, and they're going to show me a different part of myself. And so when we talk about relationships, we really have, it's like the foundation of who we are, it really benefits from isolation,
Yeah.
but we are able to polish ourselves in
Mhm.
relationships.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. Like, what came to my mind was thinking about like those old sculptures that you'll see in like the European areas, and they're like chipping away at
Mm-hmm.
themselves to reveal their true essence, to reveal their true self. And that's kind of what what came to mind. Like that symbolizes that for me. But no, I do know that when you meet people, that they're reflecting something that you need. And I always try to think about, this is not about them, it's more about me and what am I
Mm-hmm.
getting from this experience.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that you say that. Like I'm thinking I need some water, and as soon as I think I need some water, I'm looking at this cup, and it's my self sip cup. Perfect timing, because for me, that's basically what the self sip concept is about. Is
Yeah.
our like willingness and our openness to be exposed
Yeah.
in the community, in conversations with people, and then go back and look in the mirror and, okay, let me go ahead and take a sip of myself, because I didn't necessarily like what was just reflected. in me. Now, what do I want to do about that?
Yeah. And you can decide, like, am I
The
gonna
beauty of you don't have to always be ready to chip away at that sculpture. Like sometimes
exactly
you got to sit on it for a little while.
you do. And you might even not
Yeah.
know
So
the best way to approach it at that time. And you might have a little fear around if you start chipping, what's gonna show up, what's gonna come up when I start chipping away.
mhm, mhm. I want to look at your question because I feel like there's something else that it probably makes sense for us to talk about while we're here.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
you said relationship centered care. So in kind of supporting clients or program members and the people that we're working with.
yeah,
Um, Part of where my mind goes from here is one thing that I've noticed, even as being like a clinical director, and we were actually talking about this recently, is how clinicians or practitioners can be triggered when they are working with other people.
mm,
Right. So being able to know yourself and even have these expectations of awareness that you might be triggered can also help you as a practitioner to protect those that you're working with. And I don't know
yeah,
about all of the fields of helping professions, but I know specifically those require licenses, they have this like code of honor to do no harm.
yeah,
And if we're not aware of who we are and how we show up in relation, a lot of times the practitioners end up dancing on that concept of do no harm without being aware of the fact that maybe the person they're providing support to is being triggered by who we are in that space. So we're not able to exercise due diligence and take care of what we said we came to take care of and working with that client.
yeah. So really just understanding really when the trigger is happening within yourself, not allowing it to show up in the session so that the person who came for the session can get the experience that they came for. Because if we're getting triggered in there, we're going to show up in our trigger self.
I would say yes and no. So I teach again identity and autonomy. So there is a space to be mindful of what you're experiencing in your trigger. And there's also
Yeah,
a space to contain that. But then there's also power in self disclosure and presence and clarity, in part because you and I both work very heavily in energy work. So
yeah,
you know that if you are having an experience, they're likely experiencing what you're experiencing. So as a
yeah,
clinician or a practitioner, just close that up and suck it in is not necessarily going to be beneficial for the one receiving support. Like I had a couple of recent experiences online where I was exposed to a client saying, I cannot go into therapy after other people have been in the room because I feel the energy of the room and I'm
oh
unable
wow,
to be myself as a result. Or another example was a back to the ethics. In counseling, they tell you you cannot, approach a client first if you see them in the community, right? So, but there was a person online who was receiving therapy and she happened to run into her clinician in the community, and the clinician in response ran. Right, and from a clinical perspective you can understand why they run because ethics say don't encounter them first, don't say hello first. But
exactly.
the person who was sharing was so set aback that they went to their car and had a panic attack because
Jeez,
they didn't understand what was going on and why this person that they felt that they had such a secure connection with had that response. But from as a clinical director and a licensed clinical supervisor, I'm able to teach and comprehend the fact that that clinician was likely uncertain of how to respond and be present with ethics because ethics says don't approach them. So
yeah,
how am I licensed and how am I also human is one of the experiences that professionals, regardless of the profession, oftentimes have, but definitely in the work that we do, because we're going in very intimate spaces with the people that we support. And so one of the things that I like encourage here and why I felt the need to say something in response to what you said is that there's also power in self-disclosure for you to say,
Yeah.
hey, I'm having an experience right now. I'm not 100% certain of where it's coming from, but I want to make sure and share that with you in this particular space in case there's something that we need to talk about, right? So you can
Yeah.
continue to foster that secure attachment, or you can continue to say, hey, this is mine. This is not yours, but I'm
Yeah.
able to be present with you here as well. But if you need to have a conversation about what we're both collectively experiencing, I'm open to that too.
Yeah. No, I love that because it's practitioners sometimes are taught to not be like allow your stuff to come up, right? Because just the fear of like, am I judging this situation because of what's coming up for me? And so they stuff it down. No, I like how you put
Mm-hmm.
that because now they can have the transparency with the client and the client sees the vulnerability of this practitioner and they're like, okay, let me open up more because if this person is being as vulnerable as this, sharing their experiences, then I feel safe enough to share my own.
That's one of the reasons that I teach that, like exactly what you just said.
Yeah. Wow. So that does create the safety, the trust, and they're going to probably want to continue to work with that practitioner because they probably feel more connected to them because of the vulnerability, of the honesty, the
Mm-hmm.
transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I love that.
Yeah. So another thing that they teach us is like, if you're not being authentic, and I imagine we all experience this in our personal life, but most people don't know what to do with it, right? But if
Yeah.
you, as a practitioner, are struggling with authenticity, the people you're supporting know. They just don't know what to
Yeah.
do with it. So in talking
Wow.
about like our topic for today, like how do you foster this? How do you support them beyond that assessment or that first time that you're visiting with them? Like I know so much of what you do doesn't require them to come back, right? They might just have one session and that's all they need. But with
Yeah.
therapy, if you are trying to do any type of work or transformation, you need to come back. And there is no telling exactly how many times you need to come back. It might
Yeah.
be a 3 month experience, and then it's completely fine for you to take a break for 3 months, 6 months, 3 years. Or it might be you're in therapy for 5 years, addressing different areas and unraveling in a way that you can rebuild yourself, and your foundation. So if we're not building these connections, if we're not building the space of authenticity, are people really getting better?
Exactly. And it also, at least for me, it creates this experience. It's like, I don't want to invest in holistic people, right? I don't want to go that route because I had this bad experience. At least for myself, I had a bad experience with a holistic practitioner. And even though I didn't allow that to judge other practitioners, I know that that can create a judgment in that individual or not wanting to seek any kind of
Mm-hmm.
holistic care because they don't know if this person is just trying to be transactional with them, right? Or they're actually wanting to help them.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, I love that. So, let's talk about boundaries now. I know we touched a little bit about boundaries already.
Yeah.
But let's go a little deeper when it comes to boundaries. So when it comes to boundaries, how do you maintain those boundaries with your clients so that they're not calling you all times of night, right? Or they're not respecting, just anything that you already said they need to respect, right? Whatever boundaries you already set with them. So how do you maintain those
Yeah.
boundaries as a practitioner, and what advice can you give to others?
I'm chuckling because like I started investing professionally in the field of psychology and counseling about 20 years ago. And I mentioned to you earlier, I was already investing in my personal time before then. But
Yeah,
when I was like newly licensed, I still had a good bit of squareness to me about
yeah.
like jumping into licensure and having the expectation of what's expected of me here now that I finally got the license. But I
Yeah.
was also very much so myself. And so my smile is in me thinking about, oh, I addressed that very early on. but I addressed it with it sometimes with some sad, right?
Yeah,
And helping clients understand, like, I got a baby. My baby need me after 5 o'clock.
exactly.
And different things like that. So like being real with yourself, right?
Yeah.
So unfortunately, so many people that go into the helping profession, they come in with codependency.
Mm,
They come in with codependency. They come in with this expectation of they need me. The world needs me. My clients need
exactly.
me, right?
Exactly.
If I'm not there for them, are they going to commit suicide? If
Exactly.
I'm not if I'm not available at 9 o'clock, what's going to happen? And then they can't sleep. Right?
Exactly.
So much of what is helpful with boundaries, and I plan to save this until the end of our conversation. But even when I said
Yeah.
that, I was thinking it's likely going to be threaded throughout our conversation. But it's a lot of knowing who you are, understanding why you do the things that you do, and kind of like this phrase that's talked about often, standing 10 toes down about what's real and true to you, and what's important to you. But
Yeah.
also a lot of like narrative switching. So one of the things that supported my SaaS, 20 years ago, was being able to understand that if I am not understanding why I'm making these decisions, number one, it's going to be difficult for me to uphold that, right? But also later in my career, I developed this comprehension that if I am doing the work for them, they don't have to do it for themselves.
Yep.
Which means if I am always available, I am fostering this cycle of codependency. And
Yep.
I don't desire to foster codependency within myself. So, what do we need to do here, Shameka? Right? So, my understanding that my time is shifting. We are all given the same 24 hours a day,
Hmm.
and all the same 7 days a week. So, if
Yeah.
I am available to you, that's time that I'm not available to myself.
Exactly.
That's time that I'm not available to the other things that are important to me. And it doesn't mean you're not important to me, but you need to
Yeah.
be more important to you
Exactly.
than me. So being able to foster that in reflection to myself and understanding that if I want the life that I say I want, I need to make sure that I am communicating with clarity that I am important. And that looks like me knowing what makes sense for me to do to accomplish what I want to accomplish for myself. So if I said that I don't want to have a conversation with the client after 9 o'clock, am I understanding what that looks like? And
Exactly.
am I also understanding that when I choose to have a conversation with a client after 9 o'clock, what does that look like? So I'll say this: I have a rule for myself that I'm able to make a decision on whenever I want to. So just last night, I had a conversation with someone that I had just met online at 9 o'clock. And I could pull it up in my phone. It was very simple,
Yeah.
right? I may have only responded 2 times because that is my boundary in that personal space, in that particular space. It doesn't mean that I never talk with clients outside of 9 o'clock, but I have this message of consistency where I might tell my clients, we are available for crisis work,
Yeah.
but you need to understand what it means to need me. You need to understand what
Exactly.
it means to be in crisis. And then my boundaries also with regard to that, because we are available for crisis. But if I am always available for crisis, you're never going to learn how to depend on yourself,
Yep.
right? So I think about what am I trying to accomplish in supporting clients. And one of the things that I stand 10 toes down about is autonomy and independence. Like, it's important to me that you know that you can stand without me, which means I
Mm.
cannot always be available. I may want to be present in all your crises and be like, girl, I know what's on the other side of that bridge. Let me have to get there because that excites me too.
Exactly.
But I had to stop myself to say, did I just put a gate on your bridge by being available to you at all times?
Mm. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Because I never had anybody explain it like that, putting a gate on their bridge because you're available for them all the time. And also, you can't do the work for them, right? And for me, when I started out as a practitioner, that's what was happening. I wanted the work, I wanted them to be successful so bad that I was doing the work for them. Like I wanted the results for them
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't
Yeah.
equipping them with what they needed to create the results. And so I was creating this
Mm-hmm.
codependency with this client, right? Because I felt like,
Yeah.
okay, they needed me, but they didn't need me.
Mm-hmm.
They needed themselves.
No.
And so allowing them to know they
Yes.
need themselves allows them to actually go out there and do the work, do the exercises, because I started out in personal training. And it was something I had to learn the hard time. I was like, what is going on? Why they're not doing the work? Because I wanted them, like I was doing the work for them. I wanted it more than them.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't creating boundaries. So yeah, yeah. I think it's definitely important to
Yeah.
create the boundaries and also create that freedom for the client so that they know how
Mm-hmm.
to work through the crisis themselves. So they're not always dependent on you
Yeah.
because you're not going to always be there for them.
That's what I tell them. I literally say that line. I say, listen, therapy ends at some point. And not only therapy ends, but I sleep too. I sleep, I shower, I cook, I play with my child. I like to spend outside time in the garden. You're not there with me when I do those things. So how can I support you when we are together so that you feel confident in understanding that I am somewhere in this world and you have my support wherever I'm at. But how can you
Yeah.
utilize our time? How can we utilize our time together so that you feel empowered to be with yourself even when you're not here? So I ended up becoming like extremely like intentional on how we were spending those 53 minutes together and even understanding what gates did you put on your bridge so I can help you kick that thing open because you need to
Yep.
trust yourself regardless of where you at.
Exactly.
Regardless of where you're at.
Exactly. So with you being a clinician, how do you know when to refer out? Like if it's someone that you can't help and you're like, okay, this is somebody I'm going to need to refer out. What are some ways that you know that?
You actually just kind of said one of them. Like if you're
Okay.
feeling like you cannot help it.
Yeah.
Something else that came earlier in our conversation is like in my particular seat as a clinician, am I currently being triggered in a way? And
Mm.
am I able to maybe show, if I'm not able to show up authenticity in that trigger, okay, so do I need to add that into the pot of this is not something we can talk about now. We can work on something else. Does that need to go in the pot of maybe this is not the right case for me to be in support of in this particular space? But do I know someone who might be or who I expect to be more effective here? But it's also like if I am being triggered, I'll give you an example
Hmm.
early in my career. So when I was in college, um, I have a cousin that I lived with over the summer in my transition to start college. And not long after I moved there and was living with him, he was actually murdered. And so I had about this 3 years of, and so I'll give you the lay of the land with why I experienced it in the way that I did. So within about a 2.5 week period, my cousin was murdered. My grandfather passed away. He didn't want to go to a nursing home. They made the decision to put him in a nursing home. The day he was to go to the nursing home, he passed away. All right. So my story was he was
Jeez.
like, absolutely no. I hear what y'all saying, but no. And then my dog, my childhood dog, also died within a 2.5 week period.
Jeez.
And the only one that I was in close proximity to was my cousin. And one of the things that complicated that even further for me is he was murdered on the night that I was actually supposed to be in his home. I was supposed to go and visit him. But I was modeling and I had a show coming up. So we were at rehearsal. The rehearsal ran over. And so I get home and I call him and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to make it tonight. It was important to me that I made that contact back to relation, right? It was important to me that I made that contact. Well, at the time, I later found out that when I had called, he had already been murdered. So had I actually left that rehearsal on time and made it there, my experience of the rest of my life could have been drastically different.
Yeah.
So when I started as a clinician, I didn't want to talk about grief because I was still dealing with complicated grief. Right?
Yeah.
So, and I was being triggered. So there were several times in my early career to where grief would come up and I'd find my eyes kind of like starting to water and my body having a response. And so I could have referred those clients out that wanted to talk about grief. But what I did instead, back to boundaries, is I set a couple of boundaries actually while I was going through my personal journey to say, if grief is the reason they're coming, I'm not the one for them. Not
Yeah.
right now. Maybe at another point I might be. But if they're coming and they're already there and they start talking about grief, I started assessing what capacity I had to have that conversation in that space. Because again, I was a new clinician. And in the ethics, they basically say, your business is your business. There's not a place in counseling. All right. So I
Yeah.
hadn't quite yet developed that space where I could clinically have those conversations. So one of the things that I would do is I would share that I have an experience that this touches on. I'm able to be present with you, but we can talk about grief differently. And so, what I ended up doing is back to me being a child and trying to even understand my own experiences. I started finding a way to shift in my own personal and clinical development the concept of grief into adjustment. And now,
Yeah.
again, I stand 10 toes down on the fact that grief is just adjustment.
Yeah.
So even me finding a space to get to that, to see that, I was able to embody my truth a bit differently. Right. So in working with clients and talking about, how do we know when to refer them out? If that was too much for me, it would have made sense for me to refer them out because I also need to take care of myself.
Yeah.
Right. So is this case that's coming to you interfering with your ability to take care of yourself? Is it interfering with your ability to show up in your body and in the world the way that makes sense to you in this phase of life? You know, are you prepared to develop and grow in that space? If you're not, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and refer them out.
Yeah.
But the same things with like ethics and boundaries. If that experience that you're having has a high potential to dance on your ethics, to dance on your boundaries, and you're looking at where you're at in life and you're not feeling stable, you're not feeling embodied in that experience, take care of yourself and refer them out.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Like if you cannot be able to show up for this person without what you have going on, if you don't have the capacity, like with your example of grief, you're dealing with grief and you're not able to have the capacity to show up with someone else that's dealing with grief, then you probably need to refer them out. And just understanding, assessing yourself and understanding where you are and your capacity to be able to help someone else. That's very important.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we almost about finished with the questions. Have a couple more.
Okay.
Sustainable work practices. I know you've been in the business for a very long time, and so what are some sustainable work practices that you have? What are some systems or strategies that have worked for you? And I know we already touched on burnout, but if you want to add any additional stuff about avoiding burnout, you can add that too. How do you avoid burnout? So, what are some sustainable practices?
I was thinking about like systems. Again, a lot of the work that I do is like rooted in identity, autonomy, and like in secure attachment. And so
Mm-hmm.
a good bit of what I do in kind of deciding what is sustainable is kind of processed through that lens, through all three of those lenses. And I foster autonomy. So even though I can give you an answer and I fully intend to give you an answer, I want to
Mm-hmm.
preface it and say that it doesn't matter what other people are doing. What does matter is that you are doing what's important to you and what works for you. And so I do
Mm-hmm.
find that systems are extremely effective, but what that system needs to look like is really ideal to compare to where you are in your life right now, what you're trying to accomplish and what works for you, regardless of what other people are saying and what works for them. But systems
Yeah.
that bring clarity is extremely sustainable. Like when I think about the example about the bridge and are we putting a gate on that bridge, some bridges need gates, right? for the moment. But are we able to comb through our systems and update them would be one of those sustainable work practices. Like for instance, at points of origin, we do like some quarterly nurturing, and then the same thing with we have a decent bit of interns that come through points of origin, and with those we offer feedback opportunities with each session. Not each session as far as of the week, but each of those internship phases. So maybe 8 weeks, 10 weeks, or 12 weeks. And what we're doing with that is we're going back in and looking at the experiences that they're having and kind of evolving our systems with that feedback. So some sustainable work practices in a nutshell to kind of add to that would look like, what are you doing to remain flexible while also cultivating systems and structure, and intentionally going back through and updating that versus having this expectation for things to be fixed. Right? If we're not functioning with structure and flow, we typically are missing a good bit of opportunity. And that even touches on like burnout. So much of what burnout, like that example you mentioned earlier, where you said, what was it you said? We were talking about being present with a client and kind of shoving down your experience if you're experiencing a trigger. That actually supports burnout, right? Suppression supports burnout. Dissociation supports burnout. And not being in your body supports burnout. So that's one of the reasons why I encourage people, you don't have to say it out loud, but are you aware? Are you aware? Right? Are you aware? And what are you doing with that? Because if you're dismissing it, if you're suppressing it, you're supporting dissociation, which ends up getting us into this space where we no longer trust ourselves, because we can no longer have this relationship of trust within our body, within ourselves. So our mind, an example that I give often is our mind and body have the ability to have this very beautiful, and we can add spirituality, right, as well, or faith. They have the opportunity to have this very beautiful connection with one another. But if you're saying, I'm not having a trigger right now, let me stuff that, your body's going, whoa, wait a minute. You're lying, and I don't believe you. And then you start getting very cognitive, where you're very logical and trying to logically solve everything. And your body is not along for the ride because it no longer believes you. So you're trying to walk, you're stubbing your toe. You're needing to be somewhere, but all of a sudden you sit down and your body's like, I gotta go to the bathroom really bad. Well, you've been dissociated. If you gotta go to the bathroom this bad, you probably should have and could have peed 30 minutes ago, but you weren't available to your body for you to understand that your body was saying, hey, I need something here. And so when people are experiencing burnout, it's a symptom of dissociation. It's a symptom of a decent bit of cognitive distortions that we've been experiencing and trying to push down as if they don't exist. And so that's one of the benefits of like structure and flow. If you have your schedule aligned in a way, or your systems aligned in a way that they also include flow, your body knows when you're going to use the bathroom enough to where when you're going to use the bathroom, it's not like this, or it's not waiting to sit down to dance, because it can trust that you have this beautiful flow between structure and freedom.
And that creates sustainability, because if you are disassociated, you're going to burn out, and you're not going to be able to sustain your business. You're not going to be able to show up for your clients like you need to. You're not going to be able to show up for your authentic, like being your authentic self. So it's definitely, it's not going to help you sustain your business.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why the work that we do is filtered in the way that it is, because we intentionally are looking at covering those things, not just for the moment, but long term. And so when we're talking about boundaries, we talked about boundaries earlier. Sometimes the body will take over and it'll send you straight to fight, flee, or freeze. But that's for the moment. That's for the moment. Do we have this relationship within our system to where our mind our body can trust our mind to say, hey, I hear what you're saying. I understand you're having experience right now. I understand you want to run. But trust me, there's a bridge. And on the other side of that bridge, there's some sunshine and there's some light sprinkled along the way.
Yeah.
Can you trust me to come with me past this moment? I see your central nervous system trying to lose it. The central nervous system, hold on just a little bit longer so you can see the truth on the other side. Can you come with me? Right, if you have that relationship with your body will say, okay, fine. I won't freak out right now. Let me see what's on the other side. And if you lying, I'll freak out then. Right? But that's why you have to have that trust. So the body will say, I know I don't believe it right now, but I believe you. I trust you. I will be with you. And I'll see for myself.
Yeah. And then the more you do it, you have this trust within yourself, and your body's like, oh yeah, I already know it's going to work out. I already know there's something good on the other side.
Yes, and now you have long-term impact without having to fight your body every step of the way.
Exactly. Yeah. This has been really good, Shameka. So before we wrap it up, is there anything else that you want to share with the practitioners? Any advice that you would like to share? And then share where people can find you. Of course, I'm going to put all your links in the notes of the podcast, but just share a little bit about where they can find you still.
Yes. So one of the things that I really enjoy about being connected with you online is that not only are you encouraging and empowering, but you do a good bit of things and you share a good bit of things that encourages people to foster autonomy and simply just be who they are and learning to love and evolve in that. And so that's a lot of what I'd like to kind of say in kind of closing and transitioning out for today is I heard this thing recently and they said that this entrepreneurial journey is a spiritual journey. And for me, that translates to virtually our entire conversation. And that is regardless of who you are or where you are in life, you owe it to yourself. And by way of you owing it to yourself, you owe it to us to be exactly who you are and to be intentional on loving that person. The more you love yourself, the easier it is for us to love all of you.
Yeah.
So I say that to say that I encourage everyone to be intentional on, regardless of what the shadows look like or feel like, be intentional on functioning like the honey badger and going into your own shadows so you can love every single part of you, because that will carry you in every single walk of life, in your business, in the work that you do with clients, in the healing that we are all kind of pioneering in the community and in the world. It really does build on a foundation of how we see ourselves and how much we love ourselves.
Yeah. No, that's definitely
So
key.
Love yourself. Figure out who that is.
No,
so
that
we
is.
Can love, so we can love them and help to polish you, because everybody is full of sunshine, regardless of if you can see it. There's so much sunshine.
Yeah. No, that is key. You gotta love yourself. And when you love yourself, then you're able to show up for people, show up for your clients, or just show up for your family, show up for your friends, your place of work. No, loving yourself is definitely key. That is some great advice. I felt the energy of that. And Shameka is an amazing person. I know she shared a little bit about who I am, but Shameka is amazing. I see how she shows up online. I've seen her in person and how she shows up. She is really a loving, caring person, and I can see that you care about what you do, just from the conversations that we have had. And so, Shameka, how can someone work with you? Like, if someone wanted to work with you, how can they? Um, be an intern or even be part of your clinical practice if you even if you have openings. If you don't, it's fine. But or how can someone like work with you and learn from you?
So our website has continued to grow. So literally, we are starting to post more on our Points of Origin YouTube page. We are
Mhm.
posting more on our Points of Origin Facebook page, and it's Points of Origin LLC right now there. But all of that information is located on our website at pointsoforigin.net. So you can access information regarding our internships. You can also access information regarding scheduling an appointment. And one of the things that we have done with Points of Origin is we accept a good bit of insurance, including several Medicaid policies, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, Cigna, as well as several EAPs. And so we also have several different programs, including like a sliding scale, a holistic wellness scholarship, and our internship program is actually, I was thinking about getting to this point of sharing this with you all. Our internship program, we can provide services kind of even internationally, not just nationwide. That is our cash pay program. I know that not everybody has insurance. We work with a lot of professionals and entrepreneurs, and it is very common for entrepreneurs to not even have insurance. But pointsoforigin.net, you should be able to access a good bit of information from there, including my advocacy page and the work that we're doing with Humanized Movement as well as District 25 in South Carolina.
Okay. No, I love that. I didn't know you were international now. This is exciting.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate you for being on today's episode. I really have enjoyed our conversation and all the knowledge that you have shared. That's going to be beneficial for the practitioners. Um, we're going to wrap it up now, but thank you so much, Shameka, for joining us. And thank you guys for tuning in today to another Critical Mass Professional Practice Series. I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye.